Hello everypony, I'm Fauna Joy. Today I'd like to take a look at the elements of harmony and theorize a little on just how an attack with the elements actually works. Sure, the rainbow lasers are awesome, but what do they actually do? We see the magic of the elements in effect 16 times total in the show, and with the exception of turning Discord to stone twice, each time they're used, the effect is different. The first time they're used, Nightmare Moon is reverted back into Princess Luna, essentially cleansing her of evil. The second time, they're used on Discord, turning him to stone. The third time essentially renders the second time moot, as they use the elements to free Discord from stone. The only time we've ever seen the elements undo the effect of a previous use. The fourth time came in Magical Mystery Cure, where they were used to first scramble the cutie marks and destinies of the main six, then the fifth time they were used to undo the scrambling. The sixth time, the elements are used in battle in the Equestria Girls' first movie. The attack here is very similar to that which brought Princess Luna back. Almost identical, really, as Sunset is engulfed in a rainbow tornado before returning to her natural form. Though I wouldn't say this is the same attack as that aimed at Nightmare Moon in spite of its similarity. In the comics, it's established that Nightmare Moon was born not just of Luna's loneliness and despair, but of a separate entity from the moon itself. Sunset, however, was still herself, more or less. So the elements weren't purging an outside entity from her so much as they were returning her to her true self. The seventh time is in Princess Twilight Sparkle, where the elements are used in a much different way than we've seen before or since. They're used to summon Discord to the center of the group, and that's it. We see the same rainbow tornado that's been shown in other uses, but it's not purging or destroying anything, it's pulling something from another place, essentially the opposite of what its attacks usually do. The eighth time is actually the second time in the chronology of Equestria, but hey, we're going by episodes, not timelines, so there. This is when Celestia used the elements to banish Nightmare Moon, a different effect than when the main six used them later. I've theorized before that Celestia was able to use the elements due to Nightmare Moon's existence. I'd like to elaborate on that a little bit later, but first to finish the list. Following the trend of the previous one, the ninth time appears to actually be the first chronologically, seeing as it's when the princesses first find the elements and turn Discord to stone for the first time, freeing Ponyville from his chaotic tyranny. The 10th time is in Twilight's Kingdom, when the rainbow powers are brought into play without the use of the physical elements for the first time. I do find it curious that in future scenarios, the main six return to using the physical elements when this moment and the dream sequence in Do Princesses Dream of Magic Sheep pretty much showed outright that they didn't need the gems anymore. Honestly, I think if there wasn't such a backlash over the rainbow-powered appearances of the main six, things would have been different. I still maintain that I love these looks. It's like they're overflowing with the magic of harmony. And given that alicorns manifest their overflowing magic in similar ways, it makes sense to me. The 11th time is in Shadow Play, when the pillars and the main six use the elements to rescue Stygian from said shadows using what appeared to be ropes of magic from each element. This is again a very different use from what we've seen before. It's much more precise than the other attacks, as we can actually see the elements separate Stygian from the dark force controlling him. The 12th time came in the Mean Six, where the elements weren't actually used by any pony, more it was the elements acting of their own accord inside the tree. They put forth white tendrils of magic and rather brutally drained the Mean Six of the magic that created them, leaving colored logs behind. I'm honestly a little surprised that was okayed for kids' TV, cause yikes! The 13th time was kind of another odd one. It's the first time the Student Six are truly shown to be connected with the elements. As the last bits of magic are being drained from Equestria, the magic of the elements flares up, pulls the students from the bubble, and gives them each the strength they need to undo the spell Cozy Glow set in motion. While the Student Six do interact with the avatar of the tree before and after this instance, I'm not quite counting those as uses, as it's implied that the events of what lies beneath and uprooted are them interacting with the tree itself as opposed to the individual elements it houses. The 14th time was during the beginning of the end part 1, where they again used the magic of the physical elements themselves to apparently defeat Sombra. Directly after in part 2, the 15th time comes when they use the magic without the physical elements to permanently destroy Sombra, the only villain to be full-on killed in the whole show. Brutal. And finally, the 16th time came in the two-part finale of the show when past, present, and future bearers joined together to not only banish the Wendigos, but to drain Grogar's magic out of the evil trio, rendering them essentially harmless. So with this list, we can see that the abilities of the elements are as varied as the creatures that use them, but it doesn't really answer how the attacks actually work. It's entirely possible the show staff never really thought about how the elements work and used them as essentially a deus ex machina whenever something impossible to defeat came up, but where's the fun in that explanation? Looking at each use of the elements, something comes to mind. With the exceptions of Discord as well as Celestia's fight with Nightmare Moon, each time the elements were used, they purged the target of some sort of magic, usually a corrupting magic that twisted the user into something else. Discord was never corrupted or changed by an outside magical force, so there was nothing to purge. In the first battle with Nightmare Moon, the elements weren't being used to their full potential, so they were unable to purge the magic from Luna. But just how do these attacks work? Well, I'm going to borrow another analogy from Soul Eater. You wouldn't think two shows so opposite in tone would have so much in common, but here we are again. By the way, spoilers ahead for anyone who hasn't seen the show and is interested in watching. Near the end of Soul Eater's main story, there's an epic battle between one of the villains, Medusa, and four heroes, Maka with Soul and Stein with Marie. During this battle, they have to avoid actually harming Medusa as she's possessing the body of a young girl, and they dare not harm the girl herself. However, each team has a very special method of attacking, using what's known as a soul wavelength, literally using the energy from their souls to attack the enemy. The wavelength Stein and Marie used was referred to as a healing wavelength, and was used to purge Stein of magic that was driving him into madness before the battle, restoring him to his senses. Medusa believes they plan to use this healing wavelength on her in order to exorcise her from the little girl. However, Maka comes in with her own wavelength, sometimes called an anti-magic wavelength, sometimes called an anti-evil wavelength. When she uses this wavelength on Medusa, it does absolutely no harm to the little girl's body. What it does do is not only purge Medusa from her host, but kill Medusa as though she'd taken the full force of the attack in a physical body, leaving the little girl perfectly healthy, if a little traumatized. This sort of thing is what I'm thinking is happening when the elements of harmony are used in battle. The magic set forth is of a wavelength that identifies both the creature's natural self and any magic that doesn't belong in its system. When it was used on Nightmare Moon, the magic identified Princess Luna and the shadow creature inhabiting her as two different entities and separated them. This is why in the comics, Nightmare Rarity spoke and acted as though she were the original Nightmare Moon that was defeated in the show. Likewise, when the elements were used on Sunset Shimmer, they identified the magic that transformed her, recognized that it wasn't supposed to be there, and purged her, Snips, and Snails of it, and apparently purged the school of its quad. That must have been some pretty evil dirt. Unlike Nightmare Moon's transformation, though, the elements of harmony didn't change Sunset as a person. I believe the reason why she comes out of the attack filled with regret is because the main six, united together for the first time in the human world, used their magic in another fashion during the attack. They used it to send Sunset their feelings of friendship. Their deep connection with each other, even only knowing each other for such a short time, was so powerful that it overwhelmed Sunset. She'd never before experienced true friendship, and it brought her to tears. She learned that this was something she truly wanted, needed in life, and when the main six offered their friendship, she accepted eagerly. Her journey from there was entirely her own, spurred by the elements, yes, but not created by them. This is why when the rainbow-powered harmony magic was used on Tyrek the first time, he wasn't reformed. His belief that friendship was pointless was so ingrained within him that not even the magic of the elements of harmony could reach whatever heart there might be deep down. All the elements could do when faced with someone so closed off was purge him of the magic that wasn't his and return him to Tartarus, where, in theory, he could no longer do any harm to the ponies of Equestria. The same happens in the finale when Tyrek, Chrysalis, and Cozy Glow are reduced to their natural forms, essentially left unharmed, at least until Pinkie Pie crushes them with a giant cupcake. And while the trio are ultimately turned to stone, it isn't the magic of the elements that does the deed, it's Celestia, Luna, and Discord working in concert to deliver a bit of poetic justice. But then there's Stygian. The method of purging him of dark magic was vastly different from anything else seen before or since, most likely because of the presence of the pillars and their intentions toward the Pony of Shadows. Instead of the main six and their usually peaceful intentions driving the magic, the pillars and their openly hostile intentions did the driving. This is why when they realized their old friend was still in there, the elements were able to pull Stygian apart from the shadows and purge him of their influence. When being used as an attack, the elements prove to be pretty consistent. If the creature being attacked is in an altered state, return them to normal. If possible, it communicates feelings of friendship and acceptance to the creature to help them see the error of their ways and hopefully become friends. If the creature is beyond redemption or actively rejecting the ideals of friendship and harmony, then it disables the target, giving the bearers of the magic the chance to either deal the finishing blow or take the long way around to reforming the villain, such as when they release Discord. Which I feel is essentially what happened when Celestia banished Nightmare Moon. Celestia alone wasn't enough to use the full power of the elements, especially as conflicted as she clearly was having to battle her own sister. But I feel that wasn't the only reason the Nightmare entity wasn't purged from Luna in that battle. Being another bearer of the elements, Luna would have been connected to them still even as Nightmare Moon, meaning if she managed to get her hooves on them, she had the potential to use them for her own nefarious deeds. Sealing her in the moon was all Celestia and the elements could do, given the situation. When the main six came along, they were using the elements at their full power, having taken over as bearers. A similar effect happens in the comics when Rarity is corrupted in the same way. The other five are able to access their harmony magic, but without Rarity, it wasn't enough alone to purge the nightmare creature from her. They had to bring in the power of others, specifically Luna and Spike. Luna enabled Rarity to gain enough control to speak for herself, while Spike provided that last little bit of love and acceptance to give Rarity the strength and courage to add her own power to the mix and purge the creature for good. During this scene, the other five are using their harmony magic as best they can, but as with the other attacks they made with the elements, it was used in a very specific way, which brings us back to how the attacks work overall. As with the magic in Soul Eater, the attack isn't meant to directly harm the target, it's meant to purge them of anything harmful either to the subject or those around them. In the show's whole run, the only character that seems to be directly harmed by the elements is Sombra, and given that there wasn't anything directly contradicting it, I feel the answer to why comes in his issue of the Fiendship is Magic miniseries comic. In that issue, it's revealed that Sombra comes from a different race of creatures called the Umbrum, who once lived under the ice of the frozen north. We also learn that Umbrum ponies are hurt by the magic of those who live on the surface, a simple light spell harming them in an issue of the main series that's essentially a sequel, though with Season 9 it's officially non-canon, but I'm still going to use it as a reference since the only thing it really changes is Sombra's fate. Because Sombra is an Umbrum pony, he is actively harmed by the magic of equestrian ponies, and especially so by the magic of artifacts like the Crystal Heart, and likely by extension the elements of harmony. When a being's entire makeup is something that's diametrically opposed to something it's exposed to, the effect of that exposure isn't going to be gentle. So the combination of the magic of harmony and the general magic of surface ponies would definitely do a heck of a number on Sombra, especially when he's unprepared as he was in Part 2 of The Beginning of the End. The entire point of the elements of harmony is to protect Equestria and act as a force for good. When the pillars infused their magic into the seeds that eventually became the Tree of Harmony, they infused what they believed to be the very best aspects of pony kind into it. The aspects ponies would need to maintain peace and harmony in the land. Something like that isn't designed to kill or destroy, it's designed to bring balance. With Sombra being the only notable exception, that's exactly what the elements did. They purged dark magics or beings from the land that threatened the harmony of the inhabitants of Equestria and brought things to a point where even if things weren't entirely harmonious, they were at a point where ponies could improve things without the assistance of such powerful magical artifacts. I'm hoping we'll see more of the Student Six using the elements in the Season 10 comics, but I'm not gonna hold my breath. Until next time, I'm Fauna Joy, flying off. This leaves me wondering whether they... The sixth time, the elements are used in the battle in a question... So the elements weren't purging an outside entity. So the elements weren't purging out... Oh, jeez. I'd like to elaborate on that a little later, but... I should get the line right first. This is when Celestia used the elements to banish Nightmare Moon. A different effect than when... Jeez. This is when Celestia used the elements to banish Nightmare Moon. A different effect than when this... Jeez! The 10th time is in Twilight's Kingdom when the rainbow pair... While the student six do interact with the avatar of the tree before and after this instance, I'm not quite counting those uses as it's implied from the events of what lies beneath and uprooted are them interacting with the tree itself as opposed to the individual I'm not quite counting those as uses as it's implied in... I'm not quite counting those as uses as it's implied that the events of what buys... Jeez! The 14th time was during the beginning of the end part 1, where they gained the use of magic... Okay, helps to read the line right. It's entirely possible the show staff never really thought about how the elements work and used them essentially as a deus ex machina whenever something impossible to defeat Damn it, I was so close. So with this list, we can see that the... I got through it the first time, just fine, but now I can't get through it again because I need to. With the exceptions of Discord and Celestia's fight with Nightmare Moon, I should clarify that better. Likewise, when the elements were used on Sunset Shimmer, they identified the magic of that I should really not add words. They used it to send Sunset their... Jeez. It's not even that hard of a phrase. Send Sunset their feelings of friendship. All the elements could do when faced with someone... This is why when the rainbow-powered harmony magic that was used on Tarek the first time, and that's not the line, instead of the main six in their usually peaceful intentions driving the magic... Yeah, that was right. And given that there wasn't anything directly contradicting it, I feel the answer comes in his issue of Fiendship is Magic miniseries comic. I missed a word there. In that issue, it's revealed that Sombra comes from a different race of creatures called the Umbrum, who once lived under the frozen ice. It helps to have the words in the right order. With Sombra being the only notable exception, that's why... Yeah. With Sombra being the only notable exception, that's exactly what the elements did. They purged dark magics or beings from the land that threatened the harmony of the inhabitants of Quest... Until next time, I'm Fauna... Oh, good grief, I messed up my own name. Hello, every pony. As I am recording this, my channel has just hit 200 subscribers, which I am at a complete loss for words about this because it took 4 years to reach 100 and just 4 months to reach 200. I haven't even had time to come up with an idea for what I would do for my 200th subscriber celebration, so I'm leaving it up to you guys. What would you like to see me do? Is there a specific song you'd like me to sing? Is there a specific subject you'd like me to talk about in one of my episodes? Or maybe a game that you'd like me to stream? Or something else that I haven't even thought of? Let me know in the comments below, and wow, thank you so much to all of you who have subscribed. It means so much to me.